People have always needed a story, not just to pass the time, but to make sense of time itself. We aren't just creatures who live in the world. We interpret it, explain it, organize it into patterns. And religion has been one of the most powerful tools for doing exactly that. But what happens when the story becomes more real than reality? When a system built to explain the world starts replacing the world? The human brain is a meaning-making machine. It hates randomness. If something doesn't make sense, it fills in the blanks. And religion offers a perfectly packaged answer to every unanswerable question. Why are we here? What happens after death? Why do bad things happen to good people? Religions don't ask us to wait for the evidence. They ask us to believe. And belief, once planted, is incredibly hard to dislodge. This is where the game begins, not out in the world, but in our minds. We're often told that religion gives people peace, purpose, and moral structure. And for many, it genuinely does. But those benefits aren't free. They come with a cost. The cost of surrendering part of your autonomy, your curiosity, your doubt. In return, you get certainty. And for the mind, certainty is addictive. But certainty isn't the same as truth. It's just emotionally satisfying. And religion is masterful at shaping emotional realities. Heaven and hell aren't just doctrines. They're mental anchors. When people fear eternal punishment or dream of eternal reward, their behavior changes. Their thoughts change. Their values shift. Even outside of formal rituals, religion seeps into daily perception. It frames illness as a test, poverty as a punishment, suffering as meaningful. It trains people to interpret random events as divine signals. A missed flight isn't just a travel problem. It's God's plan. A recovery from illness becomes a miracle. A tragedy becomes a mysterious lesson. This isn't just a different opinion about the world. It's a different lens that filters the world. Cognitive science shows us that belief systems aren't isolated ideas. They form networks in the brain. When you accept one belief as unquestionably true, it reinforces others. If you believe that a book is sacred, you're more likely to accept its claims about morality, history, even science. And you start rejecting anything that challenges it, regardless of the evidence. This is why religious belief often survives despite contradiction. It doesn't depend on data, it depends on identity. And when belief becomes identity, the game becomes harder to leave. Doubting the doctrine starts to feel like doubting yourself, or worse, betraying your family, your community, your ancestors. That's why so many people stay, even when they feel the cognitive dissonance creeping in. We like to think that we choose what we believe, but in reality, most people inherit their faith. They're born into it, raised with it, and by the time they're old enough to question it, the framework is already in place. The rules are written, the roles are assigned, and walking away feels like rewriting your own life. Sociologically, this creates enormous pressure. In many cultures, religion isn't just personal belief. It's the foundation of social trust. It decides who you marry, how you raise your kids, what you wear, how you speak. When belief is so tightly woven into every aspect of life, rejecting it feels like stepping off the edge of the map. That's why even the most logical counterarguments rarely work. People don't just believe facts. They believe in belonging. They believe in meaning. And religion provides both, sometimes with incredible emotional power. But emotional power can cloud critical thinking. Studies in psychology have shown that emotional arousal decreases our ability to reason objectively, and religion often triggers deep emotion. Not just love or fear, but guilt, awe, humility, pride. These feelings aren't side effects. They're the mechanism. They're what keep the system running. It's a form of mental conditioning. And like all conditioning, it starts early. Children aren't taught to analyze religious claims. They're taught to revere them. They're rewarded for obedience, not inquiry. They memorize verses before they understand them. They're taught that faith is a virtue, not just any virtue, but the highest one. The one that should override doubt, even when doubt is rational. This doesn't just shape what people believe, it shapes how they think. Over time, the mind adapts to this structure. It stops questioning. It learns to compartmentalize. People start operating with two sets of rules, one for the physical world and one for the religious world. In science class, they accept evolution. On Sunday, they reject it. In daily life, they make decisions based on reason. But when it comes to religion, reason gets silenced. This isn't stupidity, it's survival. The brain does what it has to do to maintain internal harmony. If believing both things prevents a crisis, it will believe both, even if they contradict each other. This psychological juggling act can last a lifetime, but it also creates tension, and that tension, for some, becomes unbearable. That's when the cracks start to show. A verse that doesn't make sense, a prayer that goes unanswered, a sermon that feels manipulative. These moments can seem small, but they break the spell. They remind people that their mind isn't fully their own, that something has been running in the background, shaping their fears, controlling their hopes, defining their values, without their permission. And once you see that, it's hard to unsee it. What's especially fascinating is how differently people respond when the illusion breaks. Some double down. They defend their faith more aggressively, as if protecting their sense of self. Others feel lost, adrift in a world that suddenly has no fixed meaning. And a few start rebuilding, not with ready-made answers, but with honest questions. That rebuilding process is slow. It's not always comfortable, but it's real. Because for the first time, the person is choosing their beliefs, not just inheriting them. What's left behind is not just a set of doctrines. It's a mental architecture, a framework built over years, sometimes decades, and removing it doesn't leave you empty. It leaves you free. Free to explore, to doubt, to learn, to face the unknown without wrapping it in mythology. That freedom can feel terrifying at first, but over time it becomes empowering. Because truth doesn't need to be comforting, it just needs to be honest. And the more honestly we look at how religion shapes our minds, not just what we believe, but how we believe, the more power we gain over our own mental reality. The mind's game isn't about intelligence, it's about awareness. About noticing when your thoughts are being guided by something external. About asking not just what you believe, but why. The moment you start doing that, the game changes. Because now you're not just a player, you're a thinker. And that, more than any revelation or doctrine, is where real freedom begins.